At 30,000 feet above the clouds, with alarms screaming and passengers praying, two of the country's most talented female pilots suddenly blacked out, leaving a fully loaded aircraft plunging toward disaster. And in that moment, when hope seemed impossible, a quiet single-dad janitor, someone no one ever noticed, stood up and took the controls. What happened next is the kind of miracle people talk about for generations. This is his story. Ian Malik never imagined his life would lead him here, not in the cockpit of a commercial airliner, not with 287 lives depending on him, and certainly not with trembling hands that smelled faintly of the cleaning chemicals he used every night at the airport. But that's exactly where fate placed him. Ian was a single dad, raising his 9-year-old daughter, Hannah, alone after his wife passed away 2 years earlier. He worked double shifts as a janitor to keep her in school, packing her lunches himself, dropping her off each morning with the biggest smile he could fake, even when his eyes carried the weight of exhaustion. He had once dreamed of being a pilot. He had studied for it, trained for it, but life had other plans. His father fell ill, he needed money, and the dreams slipped out of reach. He never talked about it. Not even to Hannah. On that day, Ian boarded flight PK-794 as just another invisible passenger, heading to Islamabad to meet a school principal about a scholarship Hannah might qualify for. He prayed the meeting would go well. Hannah deserved more than the life he struggled to provide. The flight took off smoothly. The two pilots, Captain Zara Khan and First Officer Alina Siddiqui, were known for their confidence and sharp skills. Passengers felt safe. But at cruising altitude, the aircraft shook, just slightly at first. A strange chemical smell seeped through the ventilation system. Within minutes, the pilots felt dizzy, then confused, then completely unconscious. The cockpit went silent. In the cabin, passengers sensed something was wrong. The plane dipped, subtle at first, then more sharply. Luggage rattled. A baby cried. Someone screamed. Ian grabbed the armrests, heart pounding, instincts kicking awake after years of being buried. He listened. The engines didn't sound right. The descent rate was off. Something was happening up front. A flight attendant sprinted past him toward the cockpit, knocking desperately on the door, shouting the captain's names. No response. Panic erupted. Ian didn't want to get involved at first. He was a janitor now. A nobody. What if he made things worse? But then he pictured Hannah. Her smile. Her future. He couldn't let her grow up without a father. And he couldn't let all these people lose their lives when he might be the only one with even basic aviation experience. He stood up, voice shaking yet steady enough to be heard above the chaos. I can help, he said. I have flight training. I know how to land aircraft. Dozens of eyes turned toward him, fearful, doubtful, desperate. The flight attendant's voice trembled. Sir, can you really fly this plane? No, he admitted honestly. But I can try. And right now, a try is better than nothing. The passengers parted, creating a path. Ian walked through that aisle like he was walking through every regret he had ever carried, every dream he had abandoned, every night he cried silently so Hannah wouldn't hear. He opened the cockpit door. Captain Zara and Officer Alina were collapsed, unconscious on the floor. Warning alarms flashed everywhere. Altitude dropping. Fuel imbalance. Autopilot unresponsive. The plane was descending far too fast. Ian swallowed hard, stepped inside, and lowered himself into the captain's seat for the first time in his life. The weight of 287 lives settled onto his shoulders. This is for you, Hannah, he whispered. Then he gripped the controls. The cockpit felt like a storm of red lights, beeping warnings, and chaos. Ian's heart hammered against his ribs as he scanned the instruments. Some readings were normal, others terrifyingly not. The smell that knocked the pilots unconscious still lingered faintly, burning his nose. He pulled his sleeve over his mouth and forced himself to focus. He switched the oxygen masks on, dragged one over Captain Zara and Alina, then pulled one over himself. The dizziness faded just enough for him to think clearly. The radio crackled. Flight PK-794, do you copy? You're descending rapidly. Respond! Ian grabbed the mic, voice trembling. This is passenger Ian Malik. Both pilots are unconscious. I'm taking control. There was silence, stunned silence, on the other end. Mr. Malik, do you have any flight experience? Some, he admitted. Enough to understand what these warnings mean. But I'll need help. The air traffic controller switched tones instantly, professional, calm, focused. Copy that, Ian. We're with you every second. Let's stabilize the aircraft. Ian followed the instructions like his life depended on it, because it did. He adjusted the trim, corrected the pitch, regained some altitude. But the plane was still unstable, shaking from turbulence and internal imbalance. Sweat dripped down his forehead. His arms burned from the force of controlling the aircraft manually at high altitude. In the cabin, passengers held hands, prayed, cried, whispered Ian's name like a lifeline. The controller spoke again. We need to prepare you for landing. Do you feel confident? No, Ian said truthfully. But I'm going to do it anyway. The runway came into view, long, glistening, terrifying. Every muscle in his body tensed. He began the descent, adjusting flaps, controlling speed, fighting winds that felt determined to tear the plane off course. The ground rushed closer. Too fast. Too shaky. Too late to fix mistakes. Easy, easy, the controller guided. The tires burst onto the runway, hard, violent, but the aircraft stayed intact. Screams filled the cabin, then gasps, then stunned silence as Ian forced the plane to slow, holding the controls with everything left in him. Finally, mercifully, the plane stopped. Ian's entire body sagged forward, hands trembling uncontrollably. He didn't feel like a hero. He felt like a man who barely survived his own fear. But when he opened the cockpit door, hundreds of faces greeted him, not with fear, but with awe. With gratitude. With tears. A woman hugged him. A child kissed his hand. A man whispered, "You saved my family." In the distance, Hannah ran toward him. She had been watching the landing on the airport screens. She threw herself into his arms, crying, "Papa, you flew a plane!" Ian knelt, pulling her close. "No, Beta," he whispered, voice breaking. "I just didn't want to leave you." Later, doctors confirmed that a faulty chemical valve had leaked fumes into the cockpit, knocking out the pilots. They recovered safely thanks to Ian's quick actions. News channels called him a hero. Airlines offered him training scholarships. And for the first time in years, Ian allowed himself to dream again. Not for fame. Not for glory. But because one day, he wanted Hannah to look up at the sky and know. Her father didn't just clean floors. He saved lives. He saved his own future. And he reminded the world that even the quietest souls can rise when destiny calls.